Hi, this is Emily. How is everybody? Well, today is December 8th, 2013, and my son Matthew, I'll never forget the day. My wife gave birth to our son Matthew on December 8th, 1998. That means now my son is 15 years old. And when I think back to the day that he was born, I remember my wife called me. I was working in the city, and she said that it was time. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah, don't worry. We'll get there. Just come home." And I was like panic-stricken, wanted to make sure everything was going to go right. By the way, I do have Trans-Siberian Orchestra playing in the background because that music is very endearing to me, especially on the very day my son was born. I'll get to speak about that later. But as I was saying, I was working in the city when I got the call, and I was nervous, but I rushed to get the subway to take down to, I was working on 14th Street, Horatio Street in New York City, and I needed to get to Penn Station as quickly as possible. It was about 3 in the afternoon when I got the call, so I left work early. So I figured the trains would be running with not too many crowds. And I got on the subway and waited to the stop at Penn Station, where I was rushing out of the train to check the times on the schedule boards, and I saw I had a 15-minute wait, approximately 15-minute wait. So I grabbed a slice of pizza because I knew that if we were going to the hospital, I wasn't sure when I'd eat again. So I wanted to make sure I had something in my stomach. And I was on my way. Once the train rolled in, I got on the train, pizza and all, and I was rushing home to my wife. And I was very scared, I was very anxious, I was all excited, all the emotions just going through my mind and wondering, hopefully this was all going to play out good and that we were going to welcome our little precious baby into the world. My wife was the one who had to endure the 9 months of pregnancy, which is not an easy thing, I'll tell you that. I'm transitioning to become a woman, but I'll never experience what that's like. So, in the truest sense of me becoming female, it will never really be. So I admire women very much for the strength of delivering a child, because I remember my wife did not have a pleasant time, that's for sure. Plus, she had to do epidural for her pain, and she was thirsty, and all they could give her was ice chips. But I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Once I got home from the train, I rushed from the station home. I parked my car near my sister's house, which is a few blocks away from the station. And I drove quickly home, which was not even a 3 or 4 minute ride. And got home, and I was rushing into the door. My wife said, "Relax, relax. We don't have to go this moment." So I said, "Okay, just give me the word and we'll be going." And she sat me down and had me eat. So I had pizza, and I had a nice cooked meal from my wife before I was to take her to the hospital. And as we were preparing, she made sure she had all her personal belongings that she needed. Obviously, this was going to be the first time we were going to experience childbirth, so we didn't really know what to expect. We were nervous, anxious parents, just like anyone else out there experiencing having their first child. and we wanted everything to go smoothly. And you just pray that you have a child that's going to come into the world and be healthy. And when I got ready and my wife gave me the okay, we drove to Mercy Hospital in Rockville Center, where my wife was taken to the maternity ward. And the doctors were prepping, the nurses were prepping her. Giving birth is kind of like an anxious waiting game, because you never know when the baby's coming. It's a very nerve-wracking time, actually, especially for me, or for the husband, I should say, because we're the ones that are waiting. At times, I got to spend with my wife, but when she was going through the pain and the suffering, she had to have her privacy while I had to step out in the waiting area. And I know several times that was the case, but I understood completely, and I just worried for her and wanted to make sure everything was okay, and that everything would be fine, and that Maria and I would be the proud parents of a little baby. We already knew that our child was going to be a boy, because Maria was anxious to find out when she had her sonogram. So when she told me, I was, since she knew, I said I may as well know as well. So we were very anxious. Maria was the one on the table, going through the pain and suffering, while I was just an anxious waiting in the waiting room, pacing at times, hoping that my wife was free of the pain, but I knew she was suffering, and I know she also had to have an epidural, which I guess is to relieve that pain. I sympathized, but I knew she was strong. I mean, obviously to carry a child 9 months, an infant in your womb, must be one of the most hardest things to have to do. But women bear children, that's their birthright, and I guess they're the ones designated because they're stronger, obviously, and they can tolerate the pain. I had complete admiration and respect for my wife as she was delivering, or expecting to deliver, I should say. The delivering part was quite a ways off. So when I was summoned back and forth between the waiting room and the room where my wife was being held, it was a waiting game, basically, and all these things go to your head. My dad was at home, and he told me to call him as soon as we had the news of the birth, and my sisters also. So we had the support of family, and we were very excited. Like I said, when you're having a baby, you don't know what to expect. All you know is that life will change. It's a positive change, obviously, but it's also one with great deal of responsibility. So I knew that my role would be more significant now, as I was going to be a dad, and my wife was going to be a mommy, and we were going to be parents for the first time. We didn't know, we took the one day at a time approach. My wife went through 9 months, so I figured, what's another day? So we got there probably around 5-ish in the afternoon, and as we were going through the waiting game, the nurses were back and forth. At times it was very quiet. they had a little TV monitor, so I remember I was, my wife obviously didn't have the benefit of being able to watch because she was not facing the TV, but I was able to watch some, I think it was CNN or some news network. Um, and the day that she went into the hospital was December 7th, which is the anniversary of Pearl Harbor Day. So we weren't sure if our son was going to be born on December 7th or on December 8th. December 8th was another sad day in our history, as one of my favorite musicians from the Beatles, John Lennon, I think in 1981 or in 1980, I believe, was shot in front of his apartment complex in the city by a deranged fan, and that was a tragedy. But I kept that out of my mind, and I was just focused on my wife and I and our little baby that was going to come into the world. And there's so much that you cannot grasp when you're waiting for this occasion. It's like, life. When you think about life and the very essence of it, it truly is a wonder. It's a miracle, actually. How, first of all, I was drawn to my wife, how we met, and there is such a thing as fate, destiny, or whatever you want to call it. But children that come into the world are blessed because their parents-to-be happen to be lucky enough to come to meet, and as a result of that, a baby is born when the time is right. So, we were newlyweds, essentially. And I was older. I was 37. So, I was not a young kid anymore. And my wife was 9 years younger, so she was 29, right? If I do the numbers right. No, actually I was 38. She was 29, so I was 38. When you're just waiting around and you're not sure what's happening, when I was there spending time in the waiting room alone with my thoughts, all kinds of things go through your mind, and that's just human nature. You can't help that. But you're always thinking of something to keep your mind off of it. So, there were magazines there to distract my nervousness, edginess, and, I tried to put myself in the place of my wife, wondering what it's like to actually give birth. Because, deep down I always wanted to be a woman, and obviously you can see that. But I could never tell anybody that. So, I was kind of in the awe of my wife giving birth, because if I had that chance, I would, love to have that experience. But that wasn't my destiny. But my destiny was still to become a parent. And that is all I can ask for. And I'm very gracious for that. So, dad and all, I wanted to take that role with great responsibility, great eagerness, and not sure what the future would hold, but knowing in my heart that we would do everything possible for our child, because we knew we were going to take that little baby into our arms and cradle the boy, and take care of him and nurture him and raise him to grow and to develop and to hopefully be confident and have dreams and aspirations of his own one day. But your mind races, you think of all these crazy stuff. That's just part of, I guess, the experience of becoming a parent. Everything goes through your mind. I started thinking of college funds. I started thinking about, are we going to have enough diapers on hand? I started worrying that we have enough baby toys to keep our son occupied, and that he had a crib that was going to meet his needs. All these crazy things in my head. I even worried about how it was going to be when we were to leave the hospital and drive home, how slow I would have to drive. So, your mind just plays tricks on you, I guess, or you just jump to things ahead of time before it even happens. And I'm at fault for that, because that's kind of how I lived my whole life. I've always thought into the future, and I have to learn to live in the current, the present, and just accept the time for what it is, as it is happening. I can't worry about tomorrow because it hasn't happened yet. I can only control what's happening now in this moment. So my wife went in at 5, and we were going through the whole night, and she was in labor, and I was there at times, and I was out in the waiting room, and back and forth, and I was just saying, geez, I don't know what it must feel like for her, but just me sitting anxiously, I was a bunch of nerves. I couldn't imagine what she was like, or for any woman giving birth. It's not an easy thing to go through. But we were very excited and eager, and I remember when it was coming close to the time when she was going to get ready. The nurses were kind of prepping her, and they kept advising me, you're going to be called in soon when your wife is ready to push the baby through. I guess, we had to take some breathing classes called Lamaze classes, where we were trained, and we were in a group with other expecting parents. And technically what you learn is how to kind of encourage your wife by helping her to breathe as she's ready to give birth. I tried my best to kind of alleviate that stress, and she was in such pain that I couldn't do anything. I felt helpless. I felt like I couldn't do much, but to just be there by her side, which was all I could do. Which I guess most guys, that's all they really can do. We'll never know what it's like to give birth. That's not what we do. That's why women are the ones assigned to that, because, like I said before, they're the ones who can endure that pain and suffering. Women definitely have a higher threshold for pain. And I believe they have the internal strength. But, it's not as easy for a woman to go through that. But even for the guy, it's not easy either, because they're anxious, pacing, waiting. When is it going to happen? When is the baby going to be here? Thinking, worrying, thinking towards the future, worrying, is everything going to be okay? Is my son going to be healthy? Is he going to have a normal delivery? Is my wife going to be okay? Is she going to be hopefully not having complications? Everything goes through your mind. You're like a nervous wreck, and you're not even giving birth. So I was a nervous wreck. I don't know how my wife got through it, but I was also, loyal, and I stood by her side when I was able to, and I was trying to coach her as best I could by trying to remember those techniques for breathing. And it was something that one really doesn't understand the real magnitude of the event. Childbirth is something that is a very, very, very wonderful moment in your life that you will only, well, unless you have multiple children. Unfortunately, well, we have a son who we love dearly, and he's our pride and joy. And, we were nervous because, like I said, this was our first chance to have a baby. And Maria was very courageous, and I was so proud of her. Despite all the pain she went through, she was a trooper. She went through the 9 months. She went through morning sickness. She went through all that female stuff that women go through, the mood swings, the cravings. She liked fish, so she would like salmon a lot, and ice cream. So I tried to make her feel as comfortable as I could, and try to give her some, internal, encouragement to just weather through it, get through that pain, and things will be fine once the baby's delivered. And we relied on the doctors and the nurses, of course. And, I looked amongst all of the staff, and we were very blessed to have such wonderful staff attending my wife and I in the birthing process. We weren't worried at all for one moment, because we knew that my wife and my son were going to be in good hands. And it was just playing, waiting, as I said. And that is something that wears on you, but, you have to kind of get used to it. For me personally, I hate sitting in a room alone, caught up in my thoughts. But what else do you do, There's nothing you can do. And it was late. It was like 3 in the morning. And, the nurses were calling me back because it wasn't yet ready to happen. So, I spent like 45 minutes with my wife. Then it was 4 o'clock, 4 in the morning, December 8th. Because December 7th, we got there on December 7th at 6. Now we were approaching 4 a.m. So we were heading towards one full day. Well, no, is it one full day? No, not one full day. I'm sorry, like 12 hours, I should say, of her labor period. And as it was nearing 5 o'clock, it seemed like things were starting to happen. And the nurses were calling me, and I guess there was a lot of things going on in the room where the doctors and nurses were gathered around my wife. And I was just, I had my mask on and the gown, and I was just, sitting, standing, watching all this happening. And, obviously I didn't have a video camera to record it. I don't think we were allowed, or it wasn't permitted. So I kind of had to make a mental recollection of this in my mind as it was all happening. And I remember that the nurses were saying, "Oh, we're going to be getting ready now for the birth." And they were encouraging my wife to push. That's all I remember. They kept saying, "Push, push, push." And then they kept insisting that she breathe. And that, that's when I took the cue to also kind of chip in with the, the breathing techniques that we learned in Mamas. And trying to help her, encourage her. And, I'm a nervous wreck here watching all this happening, not knowing what's going to happen. And all I hear is her screams, and, the nurses and the doctor's just like in a frenzy trying to, get the baby to come out. and it was, such a crazy, crazy atmosphere. It was a circus atmosphere, and things were happening. I couldn't even, grasp what was going on. It was like crazy, and my wife was all there, and it was kind of messy, like, how they take the baby and all, and it was kind of, the nurses were worried for some reason because they had to use another technique to try to, have the baby delivered, which was through some form of suction, where they used like a vacuum suction or whatever. I don't know what it was called actually. But I knew that they were doing something, and forceps. So it seemed like the birth was not as easy or smooth as we were hoping it to be. And my poor wife, she was going through so much already that everything was happening so fast, and I just couldn't grasp it all. I was just like witnessing it and wondering what's gonna happen next. It was like truly amazing. It's like nobody truly knows what it's like to see a baby born, and when you're there waiting and watching as a witness to your birth giving, as a witness to your wife giving birth, it's like a miracle. It's a miracle ready to happen. And all you do is you like project what is it gonna be like. And you're thinking and waiting. And then all of a sudden, there's a frenzy. And the nurses are saying, push, push, push. And all I'm doing is saying what's going, to myself, of course. Watching and worrying and not knowing what to say or do. Just like trying to stay composed. And worrying that I wasn't going to faint. And then I knew that the time was coming, because they said we can see the crown, or I guess the head of the baby. And they were trying to get the baby, pulling. And they said, push, push, push. And she had she had to really find that inner strength to just push as hard as she could. And she just kept saying, I'm in so much pain. And God, I felt for her. Oh man, I wouldn't want to be in that position. And boy, did I feel like she had so much courage. I couldn't even imagine what it was like. And then, within moments, as I heard them say, push! They said, it's coming, the baby's coming! And they pulled the baby. And I heard my son's cry for the very first time. My wife had just given birth to our baby son, our baby boy. And it was a miracle. I can't imagine anything more miraculous as seeing your own child being born witnessing it right then and there, in that very moment of time when you and your wife have done something very, very special and was given a wonderful gift of life. And we now knew we had responsibility, and we had to take care of our little child, and we knew that was in our life, and we would